Welcome to the In Shape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is called Balance Like a Flamingo. Balance and stability are really important to your long-term health. But sadly, most consumer exercise programming really doesn't put significant emphasis on the foundation of your functional strength. Rather, it focuses on the stuff that you can see, right? See in the mirror or maybe on the scale. So in this podcast, we're going to focus on the importance of balance, on what it means to have balance. Of course, we're going to include some moves for you to try. And we're going to talk a little bit about the flamingo, a really beautiful bird that happens to be really good at balancing on one leg. But let's keep it with humans for the start here. First thing you can do is to stand up and go through that postural systems check with me. The thing that I always like to begin the podcasts with, even if you don't stand up from where you are at this moment, if you're sitting, you can still sort of partially do one where you think about your body. Just give your your limbs, your phalanges, fingers and toes a little wiggle, and think about the placement of your feet on the floor. If you're standing, you want to make sure that your feet are straight. You want to make sure that you're gripping or depressing the weight of your body into the floor with all four corners of your feet, where you use both the ball of your foot and the heels in equal measure. And then, of course, the right versus the left, the inside of the foot versus the outside of the foot. All of those things need to be in check. Your tailbone is tucked in and your tummy muscles are zipped up. That plumb line is straight, right? This plumb line, which goes from your ankles, essentially, all the way up the side of your body, through your hip, the top of your pelvic bone, and then up through your shoulder, and then your ears. So your shoulders and ears should line up. That hopefully helps you feel like your chest is open. Your chest should be open, which is a really helpful component in terms of your efficiency in breathing. One of the main sort of inhibitors of, not even sort of inhibitors, it is an inhibitor of your respiration, is that cloistered, that closed sort of chest position that we find ourselves in modern life, where you're sitting at a desk like I am right now, sort of at a keyboard, and I've got the microphone in front of me, I've got a keyboard in front of me, and if you're not doing something with a device, you might have a steering wheel in front of you. But you're always sort of moving your arms in the front of your body. What you want to do is push those shoulders back a little bit, and if your hands are dropped beside your body, your thumbs should point at a 45-degree angle towards the back of your body, not towards the side of your body. Your palms should not face your thighs or the rear. So all of those issues are the postural systems check. Take a couple of deep breaths, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth, while I talk to you a little bit about humans standing on one leg, which is not something that you normally need to do. But even if you were very interested in standing on one leg for fun, which hopefully by the end of this podcast I might have convinced you to try this, it is evident in most fitness trainers that I know, and this is of course ad hoc. I don't go around measuring, counting the number of people that I work with that can stand on one leg for more than, say, 30 seconds at a time. And the striking issue that I see the most is that one leg may be able to reach, 20 seconds, or even if you can reach 30 seconds on your dominant leg, typically with the other leg, the time might be very, very different, much shorter period of time. I know a lot of people that I see in New York City that can't really stand on one leg at all. And that's okay. It's not going to hinder your ability to do your work, or necessarily even go to your spin class or do your swimming routine or whatever it is you do for exercise. But we don't spend very much time in relation to the amount of time we spend awake, on the move, relative to other animals in the animal kingdom, where you might spend, like a rabbit or a fox might spend 85% of its waking time moving around, right? Not sitting still. we spend the majority of our day sitting still. And that's a big problem. That's a huge problem in our society right now. Okay, a couple more deep breaths. And then what I want you to do is you are standing on 2 feet now, hopefully. What I want you to try is to stand on one leg. So just give that one, jumping back a little bit before I move forward in terms of some of the other really, really important parts of the activation of the muscles on either side of your body when you're standing on one leg. I'm going to leave the flamingo stuff towards the end. We'll spend about 20 minutes together here today. But think about the use of your entire foot as you're trying to stand on one foot. Think about the muscles in your your leg, your glutes and your quads, and how you'll feel the heat kind of increasing down your leg and in your foot as you are trying to stand on one leg. Now, one thing you can do, I do this a lot when I am standing on the subway platform. If you ever see some random person who doesn't look at all like a ballerina, standing kind of like a ballerina, it might be me, because I tend to put one leg back and into like a toe position. I call it a kickstand, where I've got one foot flat on the subway platform, and then I just extend almost in like an sort of partial arabesque, the other leg back, and then plant and rest my foot on the toe, the big toe, to create a little kickstand so that I can stabilize for a longer period of time. You still have that same effect after, 20 or 30 seconds. You'll feel that heat rising in your lower limb, the stable limb, and then try it on both sides. So why would you balance on one leg? Going back to this sort of notion that we spend so little time moving around at all on 2 legs, but the need to balance, it may actually lie, or the answer to the value of it might lie in the way that our technological advances have made life super, super simple from a physical perspective for us. And what may even be more important is what traps this technology is setting for our physical selves as we move forward and become less dependent on labor, physical labor, for the things that we used to do. We're circumventing the natural uses of our human body as we produce technology to help us make things easier. So the quality of life is really, really important in terms of how you maintain a level of functional fitness that gets you through your younger years and your childbearing years. Childhood is, of course, not a time when you probably balance unless you go into gymnastics or ballet or whatever. But you're not typically going to do a lot with one leg. But again, when you zero in on the strength as you get older, the ability for both of your legs to maintain equal strength will be supported by the athletics that you endured during your childhood years. And as you get older and you stop doing kind of recreational activities, unfortunately what happens to a lot of people, particularly after childbearing years into their middle age and as they get older, is the conditions we see where people start getting dizzy. We'll talk a little bit about the vestibular system a little bit later, but suffice it to say that's kind of a different podcast. They fall down, and that can change your life. We actually had a client that was, by all accounts, thin and wealthy and happy. She was divorced, but she was really enjoying life as a grandmother to a baby, and went out with her family to a playground. And she was thin but not fit. She had never exercised as a kind of an adult. She played some tennis, but not anything more than that. Just was thin. But she tripped. She fell down because she lost her balance as she sort of not really tripped, but kind of hit like a little indentation in the playground turf. And that, really changed her life significantly. She ended up in the hospital and having to confront the issues of chronic pain and rehabilitation that took a really long time. So, well, let's see. Let's go back to a couple of exercises. Now, here's one of my favorite balance exercises. First of all, make a note of how long you can stand on one leg. And if you're feeling fairly fit and you want to make it a little more challenging, the other thing that you can do is to stand on one leg with your eyes closed. Try that. Try that on your right leg. I'll count. It should be 10 seconds starting now. That's 4, 6, 8, and 10. Were you able to stand on one leg, your stronger leg, for 10 seconds with your eyes closed? Try the other leg. Again, get yourself ready. And go. Eyes closed. 4 seconds. 6, 8, and 10. So, again, might be really difficult on the weaker leg. For most people, that's the left leg. And then the right leg, still with your eyes closed, is very, very difficult. But that's a really good assessment for yourself, whether your eyes are open, whether your eyes are closed. Check it out and keep tabs on it. Okay. I'm muting my microphone a couple of times. I caught my daughter's cold, so I have a bit of a cough and somewhat of a horsey voice. So I apologize for that today. My favorite exercise, as I said before, and if you've done these podcast workouts with us over the years, you know that the lighthouse is an exercise that I use for balance all the time with people. I love it myself. What you want to do is stand heel to toe. And if you have really bad balance, you stagger your feet, not quite heel to toe. So once you're heel to toe, you do another postural systems check. Make sure that your tailbone is tucked in and that your tummy muscles are zipped up and that your shoulders are back, right? Your gaze is forward, breathing deeply in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Then you lift your arms and extend them out to the sides. Now, you might feel a little wobbly, and that's okay. We're going to make it worse because if you're feeling strong enough, you can now turn your head all the way to the right, all the way to the left slowly. You want to turn it slowly. This is an activation, discombobulation of your inner ear equilibrium. This is where the vestibular system, I'll touch on for a second here. The vestibular system is that internal mechanism in your inner ear that allows your body to really sort of navigate its way through space and check in with it. So you're sending signals through the central nervous system down to the contact you make with the floor, your feet, and activating those tissues, all the soft tissues, all those nerve endings. Remember, all your feet are just full of receptors because that's where all of your nerves terminate. Your fingertips, your toes and feet, and your genitals are the nerve endings, sort of epicenters in your body. And so when you turn your head, you're kind of activating some of that stuff. Now switch your feet and try with the other foot in the rear and see if it's the same level of difficulty. I want to get to the flamingos here because I really do think it's super funny to watch flamingos and watch birds in general, but flamingos in particular because they're slightly bigger and they're so beautiful that the way they stand on one leg for such a long period of time is pretty remarkable. And then the other thing that I want to have you just try in terms of your ability to understand the strength of your balance is to take a couple, these are really simple exercises. If you have knee issues, you really want to check with a doctor, but squats and lunges are super important exercises because number one, squats don't do this, but lunges do, but you can do them with squats if you vary your squats in a little bit, a couple of ways, where you work each leg independently of one another. Single leg squats, obviously, or sort of kickstand squats are ways to, make sure that the left leg is doing as much as the right leg. With lunges, there is no choice in the matter. They both also force your body to interact with gravity. Now, that's a really important component of your functional exercise foundation, because gravity is the physical force that provides you some freedom from needing to go in to, sort of either your living room where you might have some weights, or to a gym where there are weights, where you can use the strength of Mother Earth to push yourself up. And that is the resistance that you need in many cases to activate your heart rate and to sweat it out a little bit. You don't really need to do that much more than that. It's pretty darn simple. We really like to complicate it with a lot of fancy bells and whistles, but the truth of the matter is you just don't need to do this. So squats and lunges. Now let's talk a little bit about flamingos. Flamingos don't squat and they don't lunge to my knowledge, but they do stand on one leg. And what's amazing is why anyone would be curious about this. I guess there are scientists around the world that are very curious about the meaning behind their one-legged stands, and then also how they sometimes turn their head and tuck their heads into their breast, into their wing. Really, really interesting, the behavior of birds. But the bony bird legs, as it turns out, are really, really important to a single bird's strength and longevity. And that's because even though those spiny little legs are super thin and seem like they're really scrawny, they are full of really thin but very strong muscles and connective tissues and nerve endings that serve tons of functions. They use their talons, their hands, to catch and hold their food, obviously. The components that line the leg and terminate in those small digits with the claws, they have to be powerful enough not just to grab in the food, but also then to take off again and fly without the food dropping. So they have to clasp the food tightly so that it doesn't drop while they're flying away. And what it turns out happens is that the brain initiates this locking mechanism that prevents the talons from letting go once they grab onto something. Birds have to land on their feet. They take off from a perch using their legs. Of course, any birds in the water use their legs and their feet to swim as well. So some move around on them on the ground, not as much as people or any other animals, but since they have their wings, I'm sure that's probably their preferred method of moving around. But they definitely have very strong legs. So why do they exert any energy standing on one leg? That is the big question. And as I was writing my book, I've been talking a little bit about the draft of my book. It's called Darwin on the Treadmill. I'm having some peer people read it for the time being, but I'm hoping to get it published here before too long. And I came across this study because I was so curious about it. I wanted to have something interesting to write about in terms of balance. It's kind of a boring subject, and you don't see a lot of sort of physical effect or visual effect of having good balance. But flamingos are just so fascinating to me. So I started doing some research, and I found that there was this scientist in Philadelphia looking into the question as to why the flamingo stands on one leg, and do they always do it on one leg or the other? Is it the prevalence of sort of similar to the way women sometimes walk around? If they have a handbag, it's always on one side, etc. So this guy at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, his name is Matthew Anderson, he studied multiple species of flamingos to test this hypothesis that actually connecting the neck turn to the leg stand, where like the left side neck turn might lead to the right legs standing, and then the opposite of that, that crisscross of applied pressure. Sorry, I didn't mute that one. Excuse me. Again, I'm so sorry. So he started studying this, the resting of heads and standing on one leg. And the Philadelphia Zoo has a really great collection of flamingos. So Matthew and his interns started watching these animals. They also got a bunch of interns, colleagues rather, around the world to set up webcams so that the guys in Philadelphia could watch international flamingos as well. So one of the things that they found, and this is where it gets really significant, not that it means necessarily anything again for human balance, but it is interesting that the flamingo is able to tolerate harsh conditions like excessive salinity of water, high temperatures, low temperatures, really wet surfaces versus really dry surfaces. What they don't endure very well, however, is change to the environment. And temperature variations, these changes that are making contact with their legs, have a significant impact on their metabolism. So by pulling one leg in, they're able to regulate their internal body temperature better. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? And I got to thinking about the, a kind of humanity maybe before we were so sophisticated in technology and so inside all of the time in terms of our modern lives, and how more beneficial, not just moving around, kept our bodies, metabolism going, and maybe the heat level, the endothermic reactions going on in our bodies to such a degree that we were able to stay warm without, with being exposed to the elements as we were then. But but it's immaterial to most people's lives now. But I do find it interesting that in a walking city like where I live in New York City, the idea of standing still is really tormenting to a lot of people outside in the wintertime, and how pulling one leg up and balancing on one leg, wondering if that might actually be something that I might be giving a try this winter. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and wish you well. And on my way out, I just again want to reiterate the notion of the postural systems check and your deep breathing. These are things you should do every single day. The lighthouse is that really simple balance exercise that you can do. Squats and lunges also tax your ability to balance on one leg, and then with lunges individually on the individual legs. And then just know that you need to know how well your balance is, how good it is. So assess yourself once a week, assess yourself once a month. It's much more meaningful metric probably than some of the others that you might encounter, especially on that scale. Have a great day. I will see you again very soon.